Alleluia. Om Mani Padme. Om. Allah.
Welcome. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and we're speaking with Fr John Dupuche. He's a Catholic priest, Archdiocese of Melbourne. Last week we were talking about Tantra, Father, and you've penned a book, and quite a considerable book, called Towards a Christian Tantra. Now that takes the mind in lots of places. So I wonder if we could devote the program to going through the book and exploring the potential of a Christian Tantra. In the first instance, and going back to your background and your introduction into interfaith and your attachment, obvious attachment and devotion to it for most of your life, how did you come to pull this Tantra out of your soul and say, there it is?
Well, I suppose that on my day off, I used to go to this library, and I used to go to this, end up in the Indian section always. So there's clearly some Indian interest there. Then another bookshop, I came across this book on Kundalini Yoga, was called the name of the book.
Right.
And the first word in that book was the word Tantra. And that leapt out of the page to me. So I thought, well, I must pursue this. What does it mean? And then there's a lot of mess around this word. A lot of the internet is full of rubbish on this word. So it took me a long time to find a branch of thought that I could rely upon. And I must express my indebtedness to Father B. Griffiths, who put me in touch with a Benedictine monk, who in turn put me in touch with this branch of Indian thought called Kashmir Shaivism.
Yes.
So I pursued that, and I found at last an area of thought that I could rely upon. And so I learned Sanskrit to be able to read the texts, and found a text and wrote a commentary, translated it, wrote a commentary, and I felt at last I knew something valuable and clear about this area of thought. So there was this. Now the word Tantra, of course, has, in the popular estimation, has a very, very, well, I suppose, incorrect view of what it's about. And the word Tantra itself just means a text, just a text or just a book, a text. And it covers all sorts of techniques and methods and practices by which a person can reach the highest level of consciousness, and that the whole realm of grace flows into them, and they begin to realize their union with God and their divinity and the divine characteristics. And they, so this is the purpose of it all, is to acquire the divine mind, if you like.
Right.
And so I was investigating all these matters. I lectured in theology at the university, and so I felt confident in knowing Christian theology adequately, and then I knew adequately about this Indian thought. So I tried to put the two together, and wrote this book as a consequence then, after lots of reflection and thought about it.
Yes, and it's a book, if you don't mind me saying, which is just mystical to the extreme. It really grasps a lot of otherwise mishandled nettles about love itself. But let's dispense with this tantric distortion of Tantra, which rests mainly in the sexual context. Now, I don't think that the sexual context features all that much in the tantric doctrine, does it?
Well, it has its place, you see. So you have this important book called Vijnana Bhairava Tantra. So it's a text which is very popular, translated in quite a number of languages, and it gives 112 methods, if you like, to do with sound, to do with breathing, to do with this, that, and the other. And only 2 of those 112 actually is concerned with sexual activity. So this the point is being made that the sexual activity certainly has its place, but relatively speaking only. And so it should not be exaggerated.
Yes.
And this is what, of course, what people do. So these, it's all to do with the listening to sounds, to music, to food even, you know, and family and so on. And so it's to do with the discovering the different aspects of the human being that can lead to a profound divine consciousness.
Right. And running either parallel to that, or are they part of it, the whole concept of the chakras, is that part of the tantric process?
Well, certainly the chakras are very typical in Indian thought. And these are different energy centers in the body.
Yes.
And even our own language speaks of that. Someone speaks from the heart.
Yes.
And so the heart is an important center of energy. Or someone, the stomach is connected with courage, you see.
Yes.
So a person who is courageous, that famous statement of Queen Elizabeth I, she has the stomach of a man. So she has courage, you see. That's courage. Right, yes. And so the different parts of the body that are connected with different emotions and different faculties. And when a person's personality grows and develops, then one center after another opens up.
Yes.
So there's consecutive flowering.
Yeah.
And there was a sequence. And a person who doesn't allow all the centers to flourish and to flower, they will be inhibited in one center, but that inhibits the other centers too.
Yes.
So a person who's all in their headspace and doesn't allow for the other aspects of their character to develop, then they become inhibited in their brain space. Or if a person is all heart and don't allow sufficient sense of intelligence, then they act too emotionally.
Yeah.
So all this balance is required.
And as you mentioned, each one of those chakras has a tone or sound or multiple sounds attached to them.
That's right.
And then there's always the well-known Om, of course, which...
Well, of course, the Om is the primal sound.
Yes.
And the... we won't go to the Sanskrit alphabet on this one, but it's the primal sound of which all other sounds are the lesser forms.
I'm just about to utter a primal sound. We're out of time for the moment.
Yes.
We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and we're speaking with Fr John Dupuche. He's a Catholic priest from the Archdiocese of Melbourne. And we've been going through this first part of your book, Towards a Christian Tantra, discussing Tantra. But I noticed something else which comes up strongly in your book. It's the reference to the Word. What do you mean by the Word?
Well, in Hindu thought, the word is basic to everything. And all reality is lesser words of the primal word. So everything is an expression. So it's not so much objects that are around us, but expressions, or revelations, if you like, of the ultimate word. And this ties in beautifully with Christianity, because in Christianity, Jesus is the Word made flesh. That is, in himself, he reveals all that God is, and he reveals who we are. So he is in himself the fullness of expression. He reveals all things. He is the fullness of revelation. So a person who comes to appreciate any particular word will discover the divine word of Jesus within that. And what I've been trying to do, I suppose, in the book is to link up this Hindu thinking with Christian faith.
Yes.
So much of our Christian faith has been expressed in terms of biblical language, which is fine, of course, perfectly, or expressed in terms of Greek philosophy, which is also good. But what I tried to do was to break away from the biblical language and the Greek language, and to express the essence of the Christian faith in terms of this Kashmir Shiva language, which I found so full of possibilities. And so Jesus then becomes, in fact, the Word in the Hindu terms, and he expresses himself in all the variety of creation. So he holds all together. All things are held together in him, who is the Word.
And the way that you're seeking to express the Word is the Word which unleashes love.
Yes, of course, because the Word finally, Jesus comes to as the Word made flesh in order to reveal to us the nature of God, who is love. And so Jesus then speaks so powerfully of love in all the Gospels, and I suppose especially the Gospel of John, at the crucial moment of the Last Supper. He speaks again and again about love, and to make the point that he himself expresses his love by his sacrifice. And so love always involves sacrifice. And a love that does not involve sacrifice is a love that is incomplete. And so I think he invites us then to love each other and to sacrifice ourselves for each other.
Yes. I'm minded of the Katha Upanishad with the directive to suggest that if you will never see the face of the divine unless you dispense with I, me, and mine. Now, does Shaivism does that have that type of philosophy throwing through it?
Absolutely, because the ultimate consciousness in Kashmir Shaivism expresses itself as I am. I am.
Right.
And this is to be contrasted with the individual Joe Blow, who has a very limited sense of himself, very egotistical sense of himself. And this is an illusion. And the person, the Joe Blow, who realizes his identity with I am, does not cease to be Joe Blow, but he realizes that his I am is an expression of the ultimate. So he becomes completely open then to others, and does not think of himself in an egotistical fashion any longer. In fact, he forgets about himself. There's no need to, because he is full of confidence. And it's people who are unsure of themselves that focus upon themselves.
And that's part of what you bring out in the book is that that's exactly a reflection of what Jesus was talking about, of the surrender of self altogether.
Yes, so he says, unless a person dies, they will, person who seeks their life will lose it.
Yes.
Those who lose their lives will find it. So that's paradox.
It's very powerful, isn't it? Yes, you can feel it there. So with Shaivism, what are the main lines of the religion itself which appeal to you most, where there's the crux of it? What would it be?
I suppose there's this sense of the breakdown of categories, because so much of our Christian theology is dualist. We talk about heaven and earth and God and human and sin and grace and good and evil and pain and pleasure, all these sorts of things. So we so often in our Western way of thinking, we divide things up to understand. And this fragments reality. But in this branch of thought, the opposite is the case, that it is a non-dualist system. So by bringing these things together, then the truth is discovered. And of course this is the case with Jesus. Jesus is the God-man. He knows heaven and hell. He knows sin, and he is grace, and he knows he becomes sin. So in himself he, to use this official language, he's this hypostatic union. So he, in his own person, joins together all the separations that we make. He reconciles all things in himself. And So this fits in perfectly with Christianity.
Yes.
And so Christianity ultimately is non-dualistic.
Mm.
And we need to discover, this is one of the great advantages of Catholic Schreiben, to rediscover the essence of our faith.
Yes, yes, indeed. We will follow that through. We're a bit out of time at the moment. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity. We're speaking with Fr John Dupuche, Catholic priest, Archdiocese of Melbourne. Now, it's clear in your book, and in fact I think you have a section in it which is talking about the division, the being a Catholic priest but embracing this other and coming out of it with a sense of unity. That was a big one. How did you manage that?
Well, when I first discovered this thing was in a monastery in Italy, and I remember sitting on a bed in a hotel in Ravenna, asking myself, what am I letting myself in for? You know, because am I succumbing to some wicked temptation, some dark force to separate me off from the Christian faith?
Yes.
So it was, but then I said to myself, no, when I read these Kashmir Shiva texts, these tantric texts, I have an experience of joy and of an excitement which is a peaceful one, as a peaceful joy of truth. And so I said to myself, well, now that's a good discernment of spirits. You discern your spirits this way. And if it produces peace and joy, then that's a good sign. So that gave me confidence then to pursue this interest. And of course it did raise the question, how do all these things fit together? And that made me think. And thinking is not always easy, but also it is extremely satisfying when you think through things through. And so I found that these things were not opposed, that one threw light upon the other. Because when you find truth, it sheds light on your own truth. Truths don't oppose each other. They enlighten each other. And so the truth that lay there in Kashmir Shaivism, I found an advantage for me to understand the truth of the Christian faith. And there weren't two words, it was the one word. It wasn't two resonances, it was the one resonance that was occurring, but heard differently, I suppose. And so I felt confident to pursue that, and I don't feel that I'm being in any sense untrue to the Christian faith by really finding great fruit in this new field.
Absolutely.
On the contrary, I find that these things can link in very, very well together. On an intellectual level, but more importantly than that, on the spiritual level. Because the spirit goes beyond words. And we can get caught up in words. Words are very important, of course, and theology is extremely important. And I find great thrill when I understand things in words. But at the same time, we go beyond words. So Jesus pronounces his words, but he is great. He is more than all the 1,000 words he said.
That's right.
And no words of theology can capture what he said.
No.
As St. John says in the Gospel, that the whole world would have to be filled with books to write all that he did and said. So
that's right. And to describe it. Without wanting to have too much revelation about it, but you must have found that you'd stubbed your toe on some stuff along the way with this, with traditionalist perspectives?
Well, I suppose some people didn't understand what I was doing. You know, I'd say that I was doing this sort of this interest, and they'd sort of look blankly. You know, they wouldn't. But I suppose there were issues that I had to, theological issues to face. But it was more the level of incomprehension from people who, you know, who find difficulty moving out of even looking over the fence at other areas, and they feel that they may be tempted or taken away from their Christian faith if they open up to and ask what other traditions hold. But I think people should have confidence in the essential and perfect value of Christian faith, and with that confidence look at other traditions and with complete ease.
Yes.
And so I think the barriers come down then.
And what was the obverse of that? Did you find that you might find Hindus or adherents to the Shaivism who were, what's this Christian stuff about? How does this fit? Did you find there was?
Well, I think there's also that side of things. But Christianity, I think, is so open, has so much possibility of openness to other religions. They have different questions. Buddhists and Hindus have different questions, and while they're certainly open to Christianity, I think we have to, in a sense, show the value of Christianity for Buddhism, the value of Christianity for Hinduism, to show that we do bring something valuable, not to impose or dominate or to disturb, but to offer something that might be of use.
Yes, that's essential. And but one of the things which is critical to that is actually deep listening, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. So to listen to each other, and so we have to. If there's going to be dialogue, and I'm very much involved in interfaith dialogue, we have to both listen deeply and also have something to say.
Yes.
And so we're not so open as to have nothing to say. But not so closed as to not listen.
No.
So there's a careful balance in all these things.
Yeah, I can't remember who said it, but it was one of the originators of the World Parliament of Religions, where they made the point that by listening to others, they became better in their religion.
Yes.
They became deeper in their religion.
I think so. I think it requires having a good teacher. And that's the big issue in all of this, is having a good teacher. Because you can get very false teachers around, or teachers who don't understand or don't just explain things sufficiently.
Yes, that's right.
Books have their value, as I know myself, but I think to find a good teacher.
Yes, that comes back to one of the key elements, of course, from the Indian perspective of the guru.
The guru, and there have been very wonderful gurus, but also there's been gurus that are unworthy of the tradition. So.
And I would be truly unworthy of my task as an interviewer if I didn't keep my eye on the time. Thank you so much, Father. It's been so illuminating, and as I indicated earlier, we have interviewed you before, and I'd really like to interview some other issues. So you'd be happy to do that?
I'd be very glad to come.
Thanks very much, Father. You've been watching Harmony and Diversity. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week. Bye for now.
Baha'u'llah, Shanti Om.